Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Have you got remember anything from Mr. Jones's provincial funding? Not even a whisper.
I've been reading a little bit in funny and
Hey, Wolf. Full reports. No declarations of interest. Would someone confirm the non-confidential minutes? The 8th. Right. Thank you. Put that to the table. All those in favour, please say aye. We'll go to the action sheet. Are there any issues there or any comment or questions? If there are none, let's go to page 11, the draft governance work plan. Now, there is a bit of an issue here. We have a replacement work plan. I presume it's a replacement. Yeah. So we'll move the receipt subject to the new report or new plan actually being the plan. Have I got that wording wrong, David, or is that how it works?
I'd received the report, but yes. We're not moving. We're going to vote against accepting this one, and then we can accept the next one in the next following paper. Just receive it. So we're just receiving this report.
Okay. Well, you've heard the experts. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you. A seconder. Thank you. Put that to the table. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary. Now, we will adopt the new work plan.
In the following report.
In the following report. Thank you. Put that to the table. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, carried.
We have to move it.
Yeah.
The new work plan, is that it's not on our agenda?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
So through the chair, the new agenda being referred to is on page 13 and is...
Just a query on the work plan, there's nothing about progress at all, and I see that there's going to be... Yeah, in the work plan, there's nothing about alternative use and disposal and the progress of it over the next 10 years when there's been funding to it. And I do see that the independent review panel will be covering a bit of this, but from reading the report so far, is it going to be they report back to us with the progress on AUD?
So through the chair, the purpose of the governance work plan is to put the papers that we have at the moment. The AUD program will absolutely be reported back to this committee once we have that funding and things in place. The governance work plan is a living document, so it's one that we can update every committee meeting to talk through how. The decision to include the AUD funding is still subject to the final approval to come at the end of June. And so once that's in, we'll add that into how we'll be reporting back. And once that team's set up to be looking at the AUD options and how that will be reported and how you as a committee want that reported up to you, the progress and how they operate as well.
Nothing further in relation to that?
Just one thing in relation to that. It would be good to get something on our work plan for what that committee will look like, designing the structure of that committee in one of our future agendas, but we haven't had a discussion about what that should be yet.
Absolutely, we could take that as an action to do a paper back to the next committee, Helen.
Thank you. We've already moved. Oh, sorry. Okay. Will we look at an alternative date, or will we accept an apology for it? Okay, thank you. We have adopted the... all right, we've had a mover, but we haven't got a seconder. Can we have a second? Thank you. I'll put that to the table. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. No questions? Second, or the one we've adopted. On page 14. We're all good? Independent review panel. Terms of reference? Wolf.
Kia ora, everyone. Nice to see you all again. I haven't seen you for about 6 months because of I wasn't at the previous WMC, so nice to see you all again. The first paper we've put together is the one on the terms of reference for the independent review panel. And I've tried to outline why it's required. It's required in terms of the consent. And I've developed or council has developed the terms of reference based on the consent conditions. The consent is fairly clear in terms of what the independent review panel must look at, and so we've based it on those. The WMC has the opportunity to approve and amend those terms of reference in terms of the consent, and so those have been presented to you. At the same time, we've presented to you a proposed membership of the IRP. That membership being constituted of independent specialists. Finding suitably qualified independent specialists has been quite a challenge, because you find they've all got no time to work. They're all very busy, but we finally found 4 highly qualified people that we've proposed to be included in the IRP and have presented to you. Thank you.
Questions? Yes.
Yeah, a few things that I think that the opening line, it should say the 2015 consent variation was actually granted in 2015, not 2014. I'd like to see the where it says the 4 membership, that it should say on the 4th bullet point, an environmental engineer or scientist. It doesn't need to be confined to an engineer when you've already got a process engineer above. So I'd like that to say an environmental engineer or scientist with a good understanding of environmental and health aspects. That's on page 23. And I just noticed in the terms of reference on page 24 and X11, to be consistent with the existing consent, it should say recommend any experts and any necessary changes to the functions of the IRP. That's just keeping it consistent with the existing consent. I noticed that you took out add experts.
I've missed which section you're talking about. Sorry, that point? Page 24?
Page 24.
Page 24, terms of reference, X11.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, recommend any experts and any necessary changes to the function. And under X, where it says review any other matters that the WMC would like to be reviewed, does that apply at any time in this process? Or do we have to set it now? Because what you've said there is review any other matters that the WMC would like to be reviewed, and then you say down the bottom, council staff have not identified any additional matters requiring review. So that doesn't preclude us from bringing anything in the future to be added. Just wanted to check that was the case. Those are the only.
Any further questions? You've all had the, yes.
Yeah, just a quick question. The calibre of the candidates looks pretty impressive on paper. I'm sure it's great to have that kind of expertise from around the country with experiences to be able to assist us with this with our program here. We have got a remuneration breakdown of the next committee meeting, but there's nothing on this one. Is there any reason why there's no remuneration mentioned about the makeup of this committee at all?
Remuneration? There's no reason I haven't put it in. There is a budget in the long-term plan for the wastewater management options. Yeah. And because this contributes towards that, it's likely to come out of that. Okay. We can answer that. Yeah, no, I just mentioned it because in the next committee down, what it is, in the X paper, it's got the remuneration breakdown in it, and so.
So through the chair, just to clarify for the committee, we're comfortable with the rates that have been proposed by the people and they're within budget for what it is that we're putting through. They are high caliber people. We've got some big issues that we need them to work through for this committee. So we have got good people in and we're comfortable with what the rates are for them to be paid.
Yes.
Thing, on page 17 under the background, number 5, refers to clause 2, and it says it was the subject of a previous review. Can you share when that review happened, and or maybe refer to it in this document, because I'm not quite sure what that's referring to.
I can update it definitely within, well, I can't update the document, but it was done in 2012. And I can provide you those details afterwards.
Did it come to this committee?
Yes.
So through the chair, that was the previous one that was done by the previous IRP back in 2012. That came through the WMC. We're more than happy to share that again with the committee if you'd like to see what the previous findings were.
Yes, please. But also, if we could have the link in this document, so what the number of the report, or not the actual physical document in here, but in brackets referring to the name of it and like this report number, just for consistency of flow of information. Thank you.
Just, my memory's a little bit hazy, but that one was a single purpose review. It basically followed up what biotransformation meant. Is that one from it? Oh, yes. Yep. It just looked at one part of it. Yep.
No further questions?
Oh, yes, for tangata whenua chair. I need to read this again and again and again. But on my first look, I wasn't too happy that it met our needs with what tangata whenua felt was a violent change in direction that took place. And so I saw maybe too many engineers and not enough process people. But on reading their CVs, I find that a lot of them have RMA background, and that if they go back to complete the review appropriately, I think that's what tangata whenua want, is to see the stages that we have participated, and then where council need to engage again for us to get this across the line, so to speak. And if tangata whenua aren't happy with seeing that in the review, then the consequences might be that there will be a division when the consents are called.
Okay, I'll respond to that.
Through the chair, they completely understand what you're saying, and it's around, we see two parallel processes running here for the issues that are in front of us. So the IRP has its role under the consent for some of the things that it can look at through there. Talking with Trotec, however, that doesn't preclude separate conversations happening between tangata whenua and council around the processes that have led to where we are, and a review of how that fits in. One of the key questions for the IRP is looking at the consent conditions and what has happened, and has the outcome being what the consent would have thought as being one of the questions for them. So did the consent actually work as it was supposed to, considering the outcome? The second part of that is a conversation with full council around the outcome, and WMC members talking to council about that as a full council rather than at this committee. So the two conversations to be had in parallel as the IRP progresses. We see another conversation with the tangata whenua reps and council discussing the outcome at governance to governance in that space.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As I said, on first reading, I was surprised how natural the panel fitted into where we are with the consent. Whereas when we asked for one, I thought we were asking for something that was going to be difficult for us to get through the system. And it was that comfort that I could see how the independent panel review sat, that I thought, gee, this is not going to meet what we originally wanted to happen. And some of the questions that Councillor Dunn has asked, I can see those opportunities in terms of reference for us to bring a little bit more to the independent panel review than looks on first reading. And then that's, I guess, the point that Tangata Whenua want to make is that the opportunity is, I believe the opportunity is there for us to engage fully. Okay. But it looks like we have to really work at it. Thank you.
Mm. Any further questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So just to clarify from my perspective, when we look at terms of reference, item 2, review of AUD programs, the panel has to reflect on clause, I think it's 8, with our 2020 deadline, as they should across all the other review items. So that's the issue for iwi, is their pipe's supposed to close 2020. The LTP says it won't. I'm asking the RRP, why not? Just to be clear.
Okay. Point is noted. Any further questions? If not, we go back to the recommendations. You want to take them one by one? Or move the whole? Yes, sorry. Do you want the if we go to the recommendations?
Page 16?
Yes. 16? No, voice should be sufficient.
So I take advice from Heather Conn, and she's saying, yes, you do have to for appointments. So just to,
okay.
If I may, Chair, to clarify, that WMC recommends to Council the appointments for the IRP. This committee doesn't have delegation to appoint the IRP, so the following council will get the paper to appoint these members. Only council can appoint members to a review panel of this nature. It's outside the delegation of this committee, and we've checked on that.
So ours is a recommendatory process.
And yes, so in the process of recommending to council, Tangata Whenua are happy to move those.
Okay. Well,
is that right?
Yep. Does that we move in the whole? Okay. I take the mover and the seconder. I'll put that to the table. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary carried. Go to 79, consent review group, terms of reference. I guess you've all had the opportunity to have a good read. Questions? 79.
Mr. Chair, just an observation in terms of page 81 in the background. I think we need a bit more clarity on point 1. My recall of those meetings was that we agreed to one option. Based on staff advice, we had to put up 2. There was debate on the 2. We deliberated and majority went for option 5 and 3. So there wasn't an even split. We were clear it was option 5 from my recall. Due to staff requests, we put in the second option, which was 3, not disguised as 1.
Any further discussion or questions? Yes, Councillor.
Firstly, I would like to get some planning, resource management consent advice going forward on whether we should be going for a full consent review or whether we should be doing a variation to the consent. There's no information in here telling us which path is best or which is most cost effective for us either. We've got to take into account permitted baseline of previous consents, and if you're talking about a whole new consent, that changes the starting ground completely, and I'm not really comfortable being in that place right now. So if we could get some advice on a full consent review versus a variation of consent, because when I read us, when we're going forward, all we're talking about is a change to the treatment scheme, which doesn't justify completely changing or having a whole new resource consent. I've read this and I see that the officer is saying that the current consent is a highly complicated consent with multiple variations. In my view, having been a resource management commissioner, it's one of the best resource management decisions I've ever seen. It is so well written, it is so well separated into components before we've put in a treatment stage, after we've put in a treatment stage, so I don't agree with those comments that are in here. If anything, I think going forward we should duplicate that consent. In here, the vision says the cultural, spiritual, economic, environmental and social objectives of the community will be reflected. Well, what are those objectives? You don't tell us what they are. So what are we heading towards? I do know that they're in the previous 2009 consent. So maybe we should be actually listing what they are in our vision. Possibly they've changed since 2009 as well. There just needs to be, those objectives need to be defined for that vision to have any meaning. In terms of the specific terms of reference, there's a whole list of all sorts of stuff in there, and I wonder whether we should split those up into consistent with the existing consent into areas such as general, cultural, environmental, social, or AUD, so that it makes for better reading, because at the moment you're flicking all over the place between all sorts of different components that we want reviewed in the consent. And then right at the bottom it says, on page 87, it says the review must also have regard to the coastal permit, the upcoming review of the coastal environment plan, etc., etc. You haven't mentioned the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement. That should probably be at the top of the list. There's no point in talking about the review of the upcoming coastal environment plan, because that's going to take ages. So let's just stick with the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement. One of the things I've noticed since in around here and since following Wastewater since 2010 is that as we've gone through consent variations, we've lost the front end of these consents. If you go back to the original 2007 resource consent, I've got it here because I went back and looked at it. Introductory note. It should be noted that a number of changes have been made to the conditions recommended by council officers and commented upon at the hearing of the applications to ensure the conditions are realistically achievable, to provide certainty of intent, and to provide a basis against which compliance can be measured, and to take account of concerns expressed by submitters. For example, immediately is replaced by within 3 months. Now, if we don't take that information going forward in new consents, we lose the intent that was originally struck in 2007. The front material to the resource consent decision in 2009 is brilliant. It gives you all of the history. I'm concerned that we lose all of that knowledge and all of that information going forward. And therefore, we need to explicitly state in here, previous, and page 87 underneath the review must also have regard to previous resource consent decisions and consent conditions. Because it's really easy to take just the resource consent conditions and focus on those and lose all the background information. And I actually learn the most by looking at the resource consent decision rather than the actual conditions. And on page 89, the CRG is proposed to consist of the following. I think we need to add water users to that group. We've got natural water quality meters and humans that are out there all the time. So I'd like to see water users ×2 added to that group, please, if that's supported around the table.
I support that, Mr. Chair. I support the request for the background
Through the chair, fully support that also. It is a draft. I like to have the input, so thank you very much.
Further questions or issues? Okay, let's go back to the recommendations.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just like Amber suggested, an additional inclusion of water users. I'm keen to see more participation by the previous WTAG people who went through the conditions at that time and made various suggestions around that. So in particular, I'm keen that we secure Mr. Gordon Jackman to participate in this forum.
It's fine.
Oh, sorry, and I mean as a consultant.
What was that, just Gordon as a consultant?
No further questions, issues? Someone move the recommendations on page 80. Thank you. Can I have a seconder? This is a table. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Next.
Page 91.
91, yeah. Okay. You want to speak on this, Wolf? Thank you. Seconder? Put that to the table. All in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. 97. Any issues?
Chair, just clarification on recommendation number 6. I don't think I've seen anything about water tanks.
This is the appendix.
Report, is it? This is an information report. Oh, to the previous report? Yes. Right, okay.
So what's the water tanks?
So through the chair, page 97 onwards is the report that I gave to council around the deliberations for the long-term plan. The water tanks that's been discussed there is something that was raised through the submission process in the long-term plan, particularly for unreticulated communities around how we can look at securing water supply. So through the long-term plan, we had a number of submissions from all across the district talking about lack of water supply for townships, also for our homes. A lot of the submissions asked for council to investigate the feasibility of bulk purchasing water tanks and bulk purchasing the installation of water tanks for on behalf of ratepayers, which would then be added to their rates to pay back over a period of years in order for them to be able to make it more affordable for the community. So it's separate from the WMC. This is just an update of part of what's something that the Utilities Department's investigating as an outcome from the long-term plan.
Not a problem. Any other issues?
Yeah, I've just got a question about when we're referring to phase 1, would it be simpler just to put that as option 1? Because effectively that's what we've got. Am I correct in that? Phase 1 is effectively option 1 of the original, because if we're doing a 10-year plan, after that, it's all bets are off, and we're looking for maybe to put option 3 in. But okay, that's phase 1.
So now that's part of our consultation document.
Formerly known as option 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? Move the recommendations. This is on 18.
So now we're on page 107.
Well, this is just formal notification of Isaac's appointment. formally welcome you, Isaac. Well, hope you enjoy the participation. At times it's been a little rough, but you're doing your bit for the iwi, so welcome. We just want someone to move the note, contents. Thank you, seconder.
Yep.
Put that to the table. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, carried. 109. Wolfgang, do you want to talk to this, or does Ian come up?
Through a chair, Ian Rue, is going to be talking about the Murray Compass. Right. It's just an update on ongoing progress on that and how we're getting towards the finalisation of that tool. And if Ian could just talk about where we're at in the Murray Compass and the next steps.
I'd also like to first give my apologies. I'll give Uncle Ray Farmer's apologies. He's up at Waiparapara at the Tukumaru. Yes, apologies from Uncle Ray. I'd also like to acknowledge Mr. Jones down the back there. I feel like he's like a proxy member of the Kiwa group because he seems to do all the great write-ups that follow all the hui. He probably knows more about the subject than I do. Okay, so let's just start with recapping. We've got to keep on going back and reminding ourselves, like Councillor Dunn said, about the front part of the intent of the consent. So 6 main areas that tangata whenua see a key in restoring the mauri of Tūranganui-a-Kiwa. Firstly, being turn off the marine outfall pipe into Tūranganui-a-Kiwa, removing mortuary byproducts and waste from the sewage system, fixing the Tekaraka sewage system, fixing the toxic dump at Te Pāokahu, addressing the impact of the port pollution on Te Tukataio, which resumes at 1 p.m. today at the hearing, consent hearing, the Waikanai Surf Club. All those welcome, no more haramai. And then stopping the wastewater overflows into Tūranganui-a-Kiwa rivers. Okay, so as I say, several of these topics are already in the papers, but I'd like us to focus on the use of the Māori compass with the issue of Te Pāokahu and the toxic leachate there. So use that as a case study. And also, it's also tying, as Wolf has said, with the phase we are with the compass as a tool and educating, training GDC staff to understand it and have the ability to use that tool. Okay, so as I say, Mr. Jones has done a great review of the September meeting. And then back in March, we presented to, on behalf of Te Pāokahu Trust, we presented to the Environmental Planning Committee of the GDC and expressed our support. That very much like this process has been acrimonious at times. And there's been a lot of discussion and debate, but the Pāokahu trustees are optimistic that at the moment there have been good signals coming from the GDC about genuine partnership consultation and addressing the remediation of the old landfill, and also having a better input into the Pāokahu aftercare program. We just acknowledge Penny Brown as our new chair of Pāokahu. So the next page, if we can skip to, excuse me, Heather, are we able to remove something? I'll put it on there. Do we all have a copy of the process flow diagram? 2 key points here is about quality assurance for tangata whenua. So this is in the way of looking at it from using the Māori compass tool in a variety of different places for different people. So 2 key points about the compass: the quality assurance for the tangata whenua, or in this case, Paukahu Trust, and quality assurance for the GDC in terms of reliability, validity, repeatability, and those parts of the process. So we've drawn up a process, and this is exactly as we are running this live at the moment. So at the moment, so from the GDC perspective, we're taking a group of 12 GDC staff from various departments, and we're going to run them through the process of running a Māori Compass assessment of Te Paukahu. So assembling the team, running a needs analysis and training, so seeing what expertise and experiences within the council over those 12 different attributes. Key point here is consultation with the Paukahu Trust to agree on this, and that was the previous page. That's the engagement and develop scope phase. At that point, we go through approval. So these are when the safety mechanisms kick in for the tangata whenua, in this case, Paukahu Trust. So we need approval from Paukahu Trust to proceed, and then we will run the assessment, and then the second safety mechanism kicks in with validation by the Paukahu Trust. So that ensures discussion, collaboration, and the ability for the tangata whenua to have a voice in the process and to understand what's going on, implications for the results, etc. At that point, the dashboard, or if it passes validation, then the dashboard's complete, and then remedial action begins. So for the Paukahu Trust, Paukahu example, an agreement is that the Māori Compass will be used as baseline assessment, and then that'll be used as the foundation for remedial action. So we've seen some funding has been signalled. Is it enough? Particularly, probably not, or definitely not, but that can springboard into other sources of funding, maybe from central government. But anyway, so the Compass framework is then used to identify key areas that need attention first.
Thank you for that. Any questions, Ian? Yes, Penny. But firstly, well done to assume the chair of the trust. Whether that's a good thing or another thing, I'm not quite sure, given some of the issues that are there.
Well, to make it a good job, good role, thank you for that. Ian, if I just also add that Paukahu Trust, when you see it there as one trust, you really are looking at Arawai Matawai,
yes,
Awapuni, Moana Trust, Kōputitia, and perhaps the other groups as well. So Paukahu Trust going forward wants to have a more open breadth of everybody that's down there as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
So yes, we wanted to bring that to the table, a collective approach here, and not have different sort of bodies popping up and down.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ian. Yes, Amber.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. This is going to be a great way to find some remedial actions. My question's now at the staff. What research do we have in place to define remedial actions besides this tool? Are we there yet? For example, it's been explained that we're going to use the Māori Compass to create a whole series of remedial actions. If we didn't have this, what was the pathway forward for council to find remedial action?
So the remedial actions will all depend on what the interventions require for each site and what's appropriate in those things. One of the key things that we've always loved about the Māori Compass is it filled a huge knowledge gap for us as an institution, and most other councils and government departments have agreed with that, haven't they, Ian, that this is actually filling a huge hole that has existed for a long time. So hence why we're really excited about getting the staff rolled through the training to then look at, once we know the outcomes and the indicator scores from the Māori Compass, about what the interventions are as the next part of that conversation. And one of the things we talked about years ago when we started on this journey together was around the tool is a great conversation piece once the scores are there. Okay, well, how are we going to lift that? What's the priority to move those things? Is it stream planting? Is it, you know, for the likes of Paukahu, there's a longer conversation that needs to be there depending on what it is. But the absolute gold of the tool is that it's enforcing those conversations to be had in an outcomes focused way that, well, this is where it is. No one's happy with it, but you also have the right conversation started around those values that you're looking to enhance, which then changes whether it's streamside planting, fencing things off, reintroduction of species, fish passage, whatever it may be. You can have those conversations because you've already started from a good place that was inclusive and had all of the right perspectives in that conversation at the start.
So what I was really wanting to know is council doing its own stream of work beside this process, or is this our only process for finding remedial action?
It's done for years.
So how do you remember, sorry, Councillor, around remedial action, are you talking about what interventions we're putting in place, or is it around the projects, or?
I'm trying to work out whether council has been doing anything to get to finding remedial actions up until this tool came along.
So through your worship, I've promoted you. So through the chair.
It's quite an honour.
So through the chair, yes, we have been working, but as I said, it was on a site-by-site basis, and normally when we had found a problem or non-compliance, we were then doing interventions based, so it was more reactive. This is more proactively going up. We already have the environmental science team working on a range of different sites, a range of different areas, but this has changed it to a more proactive stance.
Thank you.
So, Chair, just to add to that, I think Councillor Dunn, I guess this has been the problem with Tangata Whenua relationship with council in the past, is that the remedial action reports are produced and then somehow we've got to get up to speed after the fact. And I think this process here of the engagement and the assessment means that when the person writes the report finally, they'll be happy because there'll be a receptive response to their report. So I think that's the thing. There's some options about what needs to be done. They're pretty easy to scope up once we get to that point, but the two stages before are very important for Tangata Whenua.
Yeah.
Mr. Button, give it a kick. Next one.
Screen two.
Yeah.
There we go, we're away. My concern is that down in this particular part of the town, there seems to be an ad hoc method of dealing. So we're dealing with, on the one hand, you've got Aupuni Moana looking to do some work down there. We've got Paukahu looking to do some work. We're looking at wastewater treatment options down there. To me, we sort of need to bring some of the stuff together because you've got people operating in silos, and it's becoming a bit of a trend, is that by operating in silos, you don't actually have to deal with the whole problem. We're dealing with it in bits, and we're seeing that in a number of issues we're having with council, is that dealing with sections, it's almost like we're sectioning people off to deal with things in isolation, whereas I think to get a real solution, we need to be bringing a lot of the stuff in together and dealing with it as one larger issue rather than a series of small ones in isolation.
Yes, the Lifelines Director, he can answer your question directly.
We can only have 3 on at a time.
I see, right.
So through the chair, couldn't agree with you more. If there are ways that we can work better on a more catchment approach, which is what we're looking to do across Lifelines, is look as a catchment rather than taking on individual areas, and that's part of that catchment planning. We had discussions yesterday with Aro Matuai around some of the things that we're looking to do down in the catchment there. So hearing, as Penny has said, about Paukahu taking more of a holistic space of the view of that area, that definitely help. And as part of the discussions that Ian has been pushing through the Turanganui Kiwa Water Quality Enhancement Project, it's around taking that more holistic view of the water issues and the interrelationships of those. So more than happy to do that more and to work with the groups to make sure we are doing that.
Just to add on to that, Laura, were you also suggesting that possibly things like drain-wise and those other activities within council that relate to wastewater or water management should be within this committee, and we should be embodying the whole of the problem, or is it just the people and the activities outside of council that you're discussing?
Yeah, without wanting to take on a whole lot more, but it does make sense that, again, we need to be speaking at the very least, because they're not projects that sensibly happen in isolation. They are connected. So I struggle to see how, we're sort of, that group is sitting over there and there's nothing happening in between. Yeah, so yes, without wanting to assume a whole lot more responsibilities.
I think that's the beauty of the Tūranganui-a-Kiwa project, is it's about the water quality and restoring the Māori and water quality across Tūranganui-a-Kiwa. So it's actually quite a fundamental component of the consent, and it probably hasn't been given the attention that it deserves, because it does act as that holistic.
Nothing further. Someone move the recommendation. That's the content of this report. Thank you. Seconder. Thank you. Put it to the table. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Yes, Ian's involved. Or Wolfgang. Okay. Before I go any further, monumental blunder on my part. We didn't start. My apologies to Iwi with the karakia. Must be too much attendance of tangi of late, but anyway, won't happen again. Thank you, Ian.
This is on page 113 now, Chair?
Yes.
Is that what we have?
The report covers it all. Questions? Yes, Larry. Oh, no. Okay, put that to. Okay. Thank you for that. I have a mover and a seconder. Put that to the table. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Now we come to 118. Tikaraka wastewater update. Is Wolfgang going to talk to this one?
In page 108, that's the Tikaraka wastewater update, and that's a noting paper on a summary of where we've got to in the LTP, outlining the budgets and the staging proposed in the LTP for Tikaraka. It's no decision paper, it's just a noting paper.
Thank you. Seconder, put that to the table. All those in favour, please say aye. The contrary, carried. Any further items of general business? If not, with a regret. Yes.
Just in terms of the paper to be prepared for the next meeting around what the makeup of the alternative use and disposal group that may investigate that looks like, I'd like to promote having certainly someone with commercial experience be part of that, and discuss with possibly GHL around their involvement if they feel there's potential there. Otherwise, an independent.
I actually, if I can comment on it before we close the meeting, this is a critically important issue, alternative use, for us, for council. And commercially, a difficult one. Find the use. In terms of our growers and even our orchardists. Although we were told by Rick Thorpe the other day that it goes directly into the ground, and the email that Pat sent out is right on the button, because there are right throughout the country, nationally, even with the grape growers, they won't use it. So it's an issue for us anyway. I just make that comment because I think it's not going to be easy. Oh, no, I take your point. I think you're right. Yeah. Okay. Nothing further?
Could I just note that if we're looking at commercial supporting that AUD, I think iwi combined have a significant commercial head as well, and I'd like to think that we'd be involved in the process around alternative use and disposal. Yep.
Nothing further? Sorry, Ronald.
So, sorry, Mr. Chair, just going back to Te Reka Wastewater. So the upgrade, what is that?
Through the chair, we have made progress on the options for that upgrade. The upgrade was intended to be an upgrade that takes into account MORI, processes through earth, and we have been collaborating with Kiwa Group on that. And at the moment, we're looking at the land around the oxidation ponds to see if we can use that land to find a disposal or through land process.
I commend the staff for that initiative.
Nothing further. Meeting closed. Thank you for your attendance.